Hello again. I have an idea that the Russian invasion of Ukraine must have been greeted with wild enthusiasm in number 10 Downing Street when it began. Only think, COVID was tailing off, the huge bills for mad enterprises such as the lockdowns would have to be paid soon, the cost of the net zero policy was about to be revealed, as people suddenly realised that we should have been drilling for oil and gas and building nuclear power stations rather than relying upon windmills to generate our electricity. What on earth would the electorate say when they saw how much all this bungling was going to cost them in tax rises and so on? Russia is a simply fantastic enemy to blame when things go wrong in this country. They were our enemy for 50 years or so after the end of the Second World War, and it was easy enough to work up a fear of the Russian bear once more. It proved possible to tap into a lot of the Cold War paranoia which still lurked below the surface in this country. Last week, I dare say that viewers noticed that when the Russians and Ukrainians were lobbing missiles about, one landed in a neighbouring country, Poland. The headlines were, of course, apocalyptic, aimed quite obviously at summoning up the spectre of the Third World War, which we all feared in the 1970s and 1980s. Russian missile lands in Poland. Eek, it's the stuff of nightmares. NATO held an emergency meeting and there was talk of this country being involved. All very scary and coincidentally took our minds off the impending statement of finance from the Chancellor of the Exchequer that week. You will note that when it turned out to have been a Ukrainian missile rather than the Russian one which landed in Poland, everybody lost interest in the business at once. Of course, what with all the upheaval in the Ukraine, it was bound to cause economic problems in Britain, and there is a ready-made excuse for our inflation. People complaining about their gas bill? Just point to the Russians turning off the taps in Europe or blowing up a pipeline or something, and hey presto, it's no longer Britain's fault that the gas bills in this country are going through the roof. Blame it on the Russians. After the autumn statement, viewers might have noticed that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, appeared in Downing Street with a prominent lapel badge which bore the Ukrainian flag linked with our own Union flag. This was a bit of subliminal advertising, may be seen in the thumbnail to this video. The purpose was to remind people about Ukraine so that they could see our flag and theirs together and realise that by implication both nations had a common enemy, Russia. A brilliant little bit of propaganda there. The truth is, what is going on in Ukraine has little to do with us. Had we in the West not been quite so ready to keep sending missiles and artillery shells to Ukraine and offering to hold their coat for them while they had a punch up with the Ivans, then I suspect that this conflict would have been settled back in the spring. I think that it rather suits us to have a little war like that rumbling away, far enough from Britain so that we're not likely to get hit by any stray rockets, but not so far that we can't say it's having a great effect upon us. It's an ideal distraction from real difficulties and comes in very handy for all parties. We're being very skillfully played here.